All right.
Yeah.
We're live.
I'll see if I can get
Alright.
some other people to join us, but for right now, yeah, it's just the boys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. So before we pick up anywhere, how do you guys feel about the last conversation that we had? I know that, like we all kind of took in what everybody else said, and I'm sure we've followed those thoughts further since that conversation. So I just want to know where everybody's at with that so far.
I gotta be totally honest. I haven't thought about it since, but
Yeah.
but I do think that was one of the best episodes we had. I actually wanted to release it like immediately, but we had another episode that we did before that one. So I have to wait until next week, which kind of sucks because I like that one. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good conversation. I think a lot of it was, like how we personally feel as opposed to like what people should just be doing. So,
Right. Well,
yeah, because when you start saying things like everyone should or stuff like that, it turns people off. So I don't.
What specifically?
Just like things like everyone should be like follow a specific set of morals, or everyone should like remain monogamous, or everyone should do anything really, because everyone should, those words are like toxic in my opinion. But just because you don't get to control what everyone should do or does anyway. So like
I think the very nature of should. Well, I mean, maybe from like a maybe from like a podcast standpoint, I kind of get where you're coming from. You know what I mean? You don't want to alienate anybody.
Well, yeah, and like I said, it was very personal. Like we were all trying to come to grips with each other's like belief systems, morality centers. So it's like, we can always.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, the conversation I want to have, and it'll be way briefer than the one before because, like I said, I'm gonna have to get ready and dip out soon. But what I specifically have been thinking on since the previous conversation was it was we were talking about the idea of like aspiring to be, or not even aspiring to be as opposed to aspiring, right? So if you guys want to kind of like recap that real quick, or like how you guys feel about that, or that conversation. So let's pick up on that real quick because I want to kind of hone in on that.
Like be as opposed to aspire to be.
Mm-hmm.
To me, one of them just the only difference I really see, or the biggest thing I hear, is like one of them implies effort, the other one is not implying any effort, which I think that's where that word purity really came in. Where once you start applying effort, it's a lot less pure, especially when you have like intentions or goals, stuff like that.
So, do you mind if I like present sort of like a quasi belief system that I kind of like built on top of that?
Hell yeah.
Because like I would rather me frame it away and then you guys debunk the way that I'm framing it, as opposed to like trying to like work my way to where I'm at. I'd rather just present it and then like let's deconstruct it. So like we kind of ended on the idea of like purity versus impurity as it pertains to like external influences, right? So it's like if you're being influenced by the world at large, especially other people, but not even just other people, just like the force, the agents that act within the universe, the more that we do things from a place of like, oh, this influenced me to do something, the further we are away from being in our like natural state. Kind of like, did we kind of conclude that that's sort of like a belief system that has been presented?
Yeah, I can agree with that. Like the
Okay,
more
what you think,
the
Isaac?
more you allow external influence to influence your behavior, the less you are being like yourself, I guess.
And that's kind of where we ended, right?
Yeah.
Isaac, this is kind of like Isaac's where he's at right now with what he's kind of like working through right now. So I don't want to misrepresent the thought system that he presented previously.
Yeah,
So
I would say it's pretty accurate. I mean, that's what I've been, I guess you could say, meditating on lately. I
right,
just started to understand that, like, I mean, it's not a good or bad thing to be influenced, but it's just a matter of fact of being less natural or pure. It's not truly
Authentic.
from within, yeah, completely authentic. I mean, like I said, not a good or bad thing, just a matter of fact.
and you gave like the tree demonstration, right? Like a tree doesn't have to aspire to treehood
Yeah,
or
yeah,
treedom.
yeah.
A tree just
Freedom.
grows and just treat them. A tree just grows, you know what I mean, and it spreads its branches like it just does. And like, would you say that extends to because we also made the distinction like animals don't behave how like you can kind of group animals in with that as well as opposed to human beings. It's like we fight our nature because we're constantly trying to like work towards something as opposed to just operating, right? And then that takes us away from purity.
I think I would go further than that, further than purity, and I
Okay.
think something that's probably more important to people would be performance. I think people lose out in performance when they sway away from like their natural
Mm,
instincts, I guess you could say. Whatever.
okay. So this is where I'm gonna like insert where I've landed into this. I just wanted to catch everybody up to make sure like that's kind of where we're at with everything. So I've determined that there are no such things as, or there is no such thing as and when we say purity we're not speaking of like we're just using purity as that word of like in our most natural state or in the state that is in most alignment with reality, right?
Yeah,
um
yeah.
for maximum like you said, maximum performance state. I've concluded that purity doesn't exist in the form of being unaffected by external agents or being uninfluenced by external agents. And this is what to say that. If you want to take the idea that an animal is more in tune with that pure place than a human being, take a dog, for example. Do you remember when we were having the conversations about consciousness versus like instinct, right?
Mhm.
And it's like the drive to like aspire towards things or to overcome a certain way of being to achieve another set of being, right? It's like that is in the realm of consciousness, and then like being instinctual is like more in the realm of like being uninfluenced and just like being more reaction like instinctual, you know what I mean, to where it's just
Yeah.
like
Primal.
primal and just this is sort of reductive admittedly, but functionally it's kind of just like a try it if it feels right mentality, you know what I mean, like or kind of like a go with feeling as opposed to go with thinking, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's not exactly that, but I think pragmatically that works.
It is that idea of just not thinking and just doing,
Just doing.
being
So
living in the present moment. It's really what it's about.
I would challenge that by saying that the more instinctual you are, the more influenced you are by external agents. And you take a dog, for example, right? My dog's in there right now. If I say, Law, come here, he's going to get up. He's going to come towards me. I had a direct influence on his being. He doesn't have the consciousness to look
Resist.
down the tunnel to say, here are my options. I can listen, I cannot listen, or and then I can come to a conclusion. No, he's instinctual. I'm gonna come. And if he refuses, it's not going to be because he weighed out his options. Like, man, fuck that nigga. I ain't gonna go. It's more than likely because another instinct is driving him more strongly than his instinct to listen to me is. We can go further and take other examples of like being influenced by external agents, right? Social media. Social media is the antithesis to conscious being in by every measure of the idea. We could think of that in you guys know like the social dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the most profound part of that is like it literally takes your preconceived biases and reinforces them based off of like your peer group, and and that's not a conscious thing though, right? We're not consciously saying, let me take objective information, take both sides, bring them together and weigh them out and come to my own conclusions. No, literally Facebook, Instagram, all of the algorithms are made to play off of your primal urges. In effect, it is controlling you. That's why you can't get, and I don't mean us, because regardless of how, we identify, like we wouldn't be having these conversations if we weren't conscious beings. You know what I mean? So I hate to say this, but like, if you want to strive towards being more conscious, like this is like the opposite of that. But I was just going to get back to like the whole social media thing. It's like literally, that's why when you see that red number beside your notifications, you click. You know what I mean? That is us being controlled by an external force. And then the counter to that is consciousness, because if the more aware we are and the more we do aspire to be more conscious, the more we can say, I'm not going to let that affect me. I'm not going to let my primal urge to just mindlessly scroll dictate what I'm going to do. I'm just going to choose. And this is where I think my antithetical belief system comes into play to yours. I don't think that purity, in the sense that like we can be uninfluenced by agents, like the universal agents, I don't think that exists. But what I do think is purity, though, is free will. I think when you have a conscious stream of thought and you can weigh out options, that thing, after you have considered everything, that thing that decides which one to pick, I think that is the pure place. And I really don't have a large scale conceptualization of what that is, but I think the closest thing I can say that is free will.
Yeah, I'd say freedom is probably the biggest, the best way to encapsulate all of that. It's truest freedom.
What do you say about your idea of reverting to a more primal mindset? What do you say about that making you more of a slave to external agents as opposed to the opposite?
I don't think it should be a primal thing. It's really not a primal thing because we're pretty conscious and compared to animals. So I would say it's more about understanding, which is something that animals can't really do. That's what separates us from animals in the first place, is the fact that we have a mind that we have to fight with, but they don't. And it's
wasn't the original?
Huh?
Go, continue.
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, like I kind of forgot what I was saying, but basically, yeah, we're not like animals mainly because we have a mind and we have to fight with it. But I definitely don't think we're primal, or that's even gonna make you more free.
Wasn't your initial argument to strive more towards that though? Because that thing of just being, and instead of conceptualizing and becoming, that you kind of did say like that's more in line with the animal kingdom, and we should and taking that approach to life increases performance.
Yeah, like when you said like being like a tree and just like being.
So here's the thing. I never said be like a tree, but I compared us to trees because a tree doesn't have a mind, and neither does the water. The water doesn't have to try to flow down the stream; it just does. And we are still from the earth, the same way these trees and animals are. But why do we do things like think about the past or plan for the future, which don't actually exist? I mean, they're not real.
I think that is the human experience to exercise our consciousness.
Yeah, the only problem is that it's limiting us. It's giving us, and now it's not a problem to everybody because most people are okay with that. Most people don't care that they do these things. Most people are addicted.
Do you think our consciousness limits us more than, because I think I make a pretty
the mind does, but not consciousness.
Help me out, Adam. help reconcile what's going on right now.
Yeah,
Just in
I
case there's any
think.
confusion.
Well, I think what the misconception here is like, yeah, what he's saying is like, I think it goes back to when we were talking about like useless thoughts, and it's like all these things, these notions, these goals, these precedents, these expectations you put upon yourself, they actually like entrap you.
They hinder
Yes,
you.
yes.
They hinder you. And when you release all of that, when you keep all of it's very, and it, like when I say release,
Let's talk
I
about
don't
something
mean
practical, because a lot of the stuff is so philosophical that it's not even practical anymore. We can go very simply say, like, we used to talk about this before, where let's talk about like the greats of anything. Let's talk about Mike Tyson. Let's talk about people who are the master chess players who are just better than everyone at this thing. Why are they like that? Most of the people who are the greatest at anything, they don't necessarily plan on being the greatest. They don't necessarily put themselves in a place where they're putting maximum effort, and like, what they really do is they kind of just forget everything else and just live and breathe this one thing, and nothing can really take that from them. That's why people are the best at what they do. That's like that ultimate performance that I keep trying to like allude to, because it really is about that. Like, I think once you get rid of these mindful things, they distract you from your natural intelligence. It's like you have $2 million in the bank, but then you only access 200,000 because you're sitting here worrying about yesterday, or like what you could have done, or how you can compete with your opponent in the chess game. But in actuality, when you compete with him, you're just thinking about his moves and not your own. It's just distractions. That's all they are. And it's
so to level with that, right? And this is what I ended the previous conversation with, is like, I do find a lot of value in the belief system that you presented. I don't want to jump from the philosophical end, because I think that's the foundation to the practical side of things.
It is the foundation, yes.
But what I think, the parts of what you're saying that I see, what I think is going on, and this is me. I'm not telling anybody else what to, I'm just kind of like presenting. We're just presenting opposing, not even opposing, but just different worldviews, and just kind of working through them. You know what I mean? I think that's dope. What I think is going on is like there are parts of what you're saying that I do find a lot of value in. I think it's I think you're overreaching or over expanding the limitations of that belief system, though, right? So like, let's take Mike Tyson as an example, right? You're absolutely right about the fact that's like, bro, Mike Tyson was not, I mean, now he's kind of like ventured into this weird philosophy space where he's like, yeah, well, like, yeah, suck a toad ass, you know what I'm saying? Like, but he has a lot of game that he presents in his philosophy, but like from a performance, from a practical standpoint, right? He didn't get to that by sitting there thinking like, yeah, damn, what's the best way for me to be a fighter? Like, I could do southpaw, but like, no, the best way to become a fighter in that sense is like to get in the ring and fight. You know what I mean? And there's like a muscle memory element to that, right? The problem is, I don't think that expands to all aspects of life, though, because what are the other parts of Mike Tyson's life? Like, bro, Mike Tyson had a terrible life, bro. Like, he was an amazing fighter, bro. He had terrible things happen to him. Like, I want to say, like, bro, like prison, right? And here's the thing with the belief system that I'm presenting, as far as like exercise your consciousness, right? I think, see, this is the thing, right? It kind of sounds like what you're saying is like, you don't want to eliminate consciousness. You want to eliminate the things that put limitations on our
consciousness,
on our performance. Well, I'm defining consciousness as the ability to follow a stream of thought and weigh out the variables. You know what I mean?
I think that's an oxymoron. You're kind of limiting your consciousness by thinking.
Yep.
But I don't think that's the truth. I don't think you are limiting your consciousness by thinking. I think that might be like what you're trying to say. But the point I'm trying to get to is like, okay, think about like aspirations, right? You want to strive to become a great fighter or whatever, or like you want to strive to be financially stable, or you want to strive to be in a secure relationship, right? And you're kind of saying like, it's us striving to do these things that are putting limitations on our consciousness. I think that the want to strive towards things is not an action. I think it's a reaction, and I think it's a reaction to being aware of life and all it has to throw at you, right? I think that if you deny that, you're going to be in more trouble than if you were to, I think anxiety is a thing. I think that overthinking is a thing, right? But I guess what I'm trying to say is like
you need the aspiration in the first place to get somewhere, right?
Well, you need the aspiration to not be a slave to the agents of the external realm.
Woo!
You know what I mean?
Let me tell you, that aspiration in the first place is your very first slave owner. That's the very first cage that you ever
and I
been
think-
into.
There's a difference between me and you.
I think
we're a slave. I think you're inevitably going to be a slave to something. I think the free will that we do have is the ability to choose who our master is.
Yeah, but I don't agree with that at all. See, like
Let's
you don't
go.
but you can
Let's
just
go.
turn because you can just turn it all off, man. You don't have to
But
be.
if you turn it all off in your mind, right?
No. I'm talking about all the external agents that you're talking about, like social media, and like you can just turn it all off. You can just sit alone with yourself.
Because even your body, you're a slave to your body because you have to have food to eat.
Yeah, but you could turn that off too. See?
And die. If that's what you want.
But
I
that's
mean,
the point. It's like you're not though a slave to anything. Like you're only a slave to your mind. That's the thing, because it's the
but
only
your
thing
mind
that
is something.
it is something.
Your mind is something.
But
It's
that's the
something
point.
to-
It limits you. It limits you. It puts restrictions
But
on you.
what is you then?
That's where that's fundamentally is what is the difference between I and me? And what the craziest thing that most philosophers of all time have never been able to figure out is how can I actually observe the me? It's very interesting. But that's something that we could talk about. But that's a huge question right there. That is something that no one's ever been able to really understand. But I think it's a matter of.
But like in practice, right? In practice, we all value human life, right? Right?
Yeah.
We value human life. If not, that's cool. I'm not judging people for not judging human life. I'm just saying the Holocaust, it goes places when you don't value human life. And if you accept where that goes, then I respect it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
If you value human life, I think that you have to accept the fact that you're going to be a slave to something. I mean, the human experience, and I don't think that comes from any type of flaw. I think that comes from the fact that we are naturally limited beings.
Yeah,
but limitation doesn't mean
it's
it's
not
perfect.
a flaw. I never thought it was a flaw either. I just know it's fundamentally in the way.
Suboptimal.
It's just not optimal, but it's not a flaw. There's nothing wrong with anything.
It's optimal. It's suboptimal towards what? Because it's the thing, right?
Towards
If you're
ultimate
saying-
performance.
But performance towards what is what I'm saying.
I think that's a good question because I think it does matter to say towards what, because if you're interested in performance, you really have to be performing at something. But I would say it's deeper than performance. Performance is something that I'm interested in. So this is when I say performance, it's very personal.
Sure.
It's very personal.
And like I said, I find value in what you're saying because I do I'm an artist. You know what I'm saying? I know for a fact that if I shut off all of my anxieties, I sit in front of that piano and I just play and I play and I play.
It's that flow state, yeah.
I believe in the flow state. You know what I mean? I just think that it has its limitations. You know what I mean? And I think
what if it didn't? Right? I mean, imagine that. Like, imagine never having to worry about that going away and living the rest of your life like that. Never having to worry about anything.
This is the thing, right? I'm about to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why it has its limitations. Because we've observed the limitations with people like Mike Tyson. The reason why he ended up broke is because he was so busy boxing that he wasn't on top of his business. Then he ended up in jail. In jail, you don't even have access to the flow state necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Like if I dedicate my life to the flow state of playing piano, that's just an example, right? And I'm personally interested in being the optimal piano player, right? Yeah, I can shut off like multiple aspects of my life to play piano. I can even go without, I go without food all the time when I'm in my flow state. Cause it's like, bro, I don't care about that. I'm in my zone. You know what I'm saying? but there is a limitation to the zone because eventually, if I don't go work, they're gonna take I'm not gonna be able to pay for my house. I'm gonna end up piano-less, essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
I mean,
and that's but I mean,
Go
this is that what we're talking that when you're talking about that, that's like very extreme. And like, I don't think that Isaac even thinks that either. That like you should just like 100%
well,
dedicate your
I
life
do
to
think
something
so,
and like
because
never stop. And if you go broke, it doesn't matter. You just keep working. I think what he's saying
Well, it
is
depends
just
on what
like,
matters to you.
yeah, it depends. Yeah, I guess that's the point. It's just
Yeah.
not
Like,
he's
does it
not
matter
saying,
to you to still own your apartment? I mean, does that matter to you? Some people have been so enlightened where they take off all their clothes and they just go to churches in loincloths and just meditate for 10 hours a day in the Himalayan mountains and shit. Like, that's how enlightened people can get, to the point where like nothing, they are attached to almost nothing, material at least. You know, I mean, none of that stuff really matters unless it matters to you. But that's where it gets personal. But as far as flow state goes, I mean, you could be in a jail cell and be in the present moment and be at peace. And there are people like that who are, they kind of they're almost forced to be when they're in there, like, for the, you know, for life. So,
yeah. I'm not saying that that's the exact scenario that is going to come forward. But what I'm trying to say is like the experience, especially even if you believe in like especially if you believe in like evolution and like Darwinian evolution. I don't consider myself an evolutionist, but I think there's something to like social Darwinism or like the survival of the fittest mentality. And if you look at animals, like, okay, here's another thing, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is like that might not necessarily be the exact scenario with like me losing my piano. Now I can no longer play because I'm in jail. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like there is no subverting the external. The external is always going to like it's like you don't want to have main character syndrome to where you think that like, oh, it is only me, because you are going to be faced with external forces. Now, granted, I guess it is up to you whether you perceive things to be, problematic or not. But we can't deny that these things do interact with the individual. You get what I'm saying?
Well, what is a problem? Define that. What is a problem?
Well, I'm going off of just what you were saying as far as like the only problems we have are the like problems that we generate within ourselves. And
Conflict, specifically, inner conflict is the only conflict we have. It's impossible to have external conflict. I mean, conflict is self-inflicted always. You can't be offended by something externally. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, how could you? You know. But when something happens to you outside, like if your best friend slaps you, like we had last time that talk, well, that's offending. That's offensive because you're like, oh, I'm attached to this person. Like I thought they were something else, or I thought they loved me, or whatever.
It hurt.
the definition of problem outside of math is an intricate, unsettled question, a source of perplexity, distress, or vexation, and difficulty in understanding or accepting, which are all personal problems.
So I think where we've landed at with this, and just tell me what you guys think. What Adam was basically saying is like Isaac isn't necessarily saying that like the flow state is all there is.
No, definitely not.
See, that was the impression that I was under based off of the previous conversation where you were saying like, yo, I'm trying to get to the point to where I'm detached from everything.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. I mean, if I could, that'd be awesome. But I'm not going to try too hard because then I'll never get there.
Would that be great?
It's a peace of mind. Hell yeah, that's what everybody wants. That's why everyone does what they do. You know, I made music because I wanted the peace of mind, or I made music because it made me feel like I was in the flow state, or I started, whatever I do, I just do it because it gets me to not think about the future, not worry about anything. That's the flow state. That's what it all is. When people do something they love, they're doing it because it doesn't make them, think about anything else. It's just pure bliss when they're doing what they love. That's why I always say, do what you love, right? Because that's what it does. That's what it does to people.
Do you think that the flow state can be destructive?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it will be. No.
So,
And I guess it depends what you
If
mean
you-
destructive. I mean, you could be in a flow state of like if you're a construction
Yeah.
worker who loves to destroy things, and you're like, okay, it might be. Yeah, I guess that's a way to do
yeah,
it.
I think it just, like I said, it just comes down to the extent of the value that we place on human life. You know what I mean? I think that if you value human life, the flow state can absolutely be destructive. And because of external factors, like if let's just say that my whole shit is just, I just love sex. You know what I mean? It's basically inevitable that if I just have sex with any and everything that I see for a long enough period in time, I'm gonna catch some type of disease. You know what I mean? Maybe not always, but I mean that happens. You know what I mean? And that happens to people who are uninterested with the long term consequences or responses or effects of their current action. And if you think about sex is absolutely flow state. It's literally the most like in the moment thing. And to your point, and like I said, I find value in what you're saying, because even to your point, if you're thinking about some other shit while you're having sex is going to be terrible. You know what I mean?
And I've done that a lot. I was like, it's not for everybody.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm trying to say though is like the limitations to the flow state exist if you value human life high enough on the hierarchy. Like if you value it under, whatever. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like eventually you get AIDS and die. So it's like, yeah, you were in your flow state. Yeah, you were kicking ass, but you died at like 22 years old. If that's cool with you, you know what I'm saying? Then I'm not here to say that that's wrong.
I think that is the whole point of this. It's like, what matters to you?
Well, not only that, but why do we even think about death in the first place? That's silly to me. Death is, for instance, I didn't ask to be born, so why could I ever ask when I will die? It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for me to say that me dying is either a problem or a bad thing, because I don't know when it's gonna. I could choke on food tonight on my dinner and then die. Like I don't know when it's gonna happen. So I don't think it really. I think it's irrelevant. I think death is pretty irrelevant because we're gonna go back into the void. Our life is so short compared to you would say the scientific, age of the universe. Like it's so small. We would live like 80 years. It's nothing, and most people don't even make it that long. They died in a car crash in the 20s or whatever. Like, so that's why I think it's so irrelevant, because you're going to go back into the void. Why we really come from nothing.
I want to ask you one more question. And then I'll probably skedaddle out of here. I think that this is kind of like a good like DLC to the previous conversation.
Yeah.
With that being said, right? For me, I have to be very aware of like the philosophical side of this conversation, and then also the practical side of this conversation. Yeah. Let's go back to like the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, right? I mean, essentially, and I'm not trying to be like one of these sensationalist journalists or whatever. Like he said that the Holocaust wasn't bad. Like I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to say, okay, like for me personally, with the value that I put on human life, I view, and that's not the only atrocity. Like, bro, slavery in America, like black slavery in America, an atrocity. Yeah. The Holocaust, an atrocity. Childhood poverty.
Native Americans,
bro. My wife is Native American, so I'm glad you said that.
That is almost worse than slavery, because we literally killed them all. We killed all. There were hundreds of thousands of people here before we got here. And
I'm not going to quantify any atrocity. I'm not going to say that slavery was better or worse than any other atrocity. What I am trying to say and what I am trying to get to the core of is like me and you are right now identifying something as better and worse. We're identifying this state of being uninterrupted by somebody that wants to put me in a fucking chamber and gas me to death. We're identifying this as better to that, right? Yeah. Under the worldview that Isaac is currently presenting, that's not necessarily the case. Reconcile that for me. And then also, like, after you give me your thoughts on that, what does that mean in practice?
Well, the way I look at it is I woke up this morning and I didn't die in the Holocaust. And that's pretty much it.
So if it doesn't affect me, then it doesn't matter to me.
It might matter. It might matter to you, but it's not useful, even if it does.
Even if you, yeah, I mean, like,
I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand where like I have to get up and be like, ooh, like, damn, that was bad. I mean, even if I personally believe that, where I don't even see why it matters. Like, yeah, even if I think it's really bad, it already happened. It's just
You're
kind of useless.
I'm about to tell you. Oh my gosh, no, bro, not useless at all. And this is why history matters, because I mean, based off of what Adam has kind of like hinted at him knowing about, you know what I mean, like with like history with Nietzsche and like all of that, I mean, wouldn't you have to agree? It definitely matters. Like, it just like.
well, I mean, it matters in the sense that like if you don't know it, then like you're bound to repeat that really awful behavior generationally. I
Do
think.
you
and that-
consider it to be awful?
well, yeah, I mean, it is awful. I mean, no, I think most people think,
So
and like
if
that's
we
the
think
thing.
it's awful,
But that's the thing. Most people think that that's awful, but not everyone does. I'm not saying Isaac does or doesn't. I'm just saying
I would say
his
I
point.
have no opinion because I don't think it's even relevant. Like, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
personally, I don't agree with killing people, but that's like a personal thing. So I know it's not objective.
if you were taken into, if you were put on a boat with you and your family and your wife, I mean your girlfriend, like people that you love, everybody that you've come in contact with, that you've had a prior relationship with, and they told everybody all to stand in a mosh pit, and then they Molotov them to death. Would you still be able to look at that and say, I mean, we're gonna die anyway?
Absolutely,
You know what I mean?
have no choice. That's the only thing there. That's the only truth there is. Of course, absolutely. It doesn't matter how or when we die. Why does that matter? And death is so irrelevant. The only thing that matters is what we're doing while we're alive. So it's
And even then,
it's
even
just
then,
silly
does
to-
that?
to me,
I just
personally, I
don't-
think it's silly to even be like, oh well, this is bad because it's death. I mean, death is just death. Like, we're gonna
What
die
you're doing-
regardless.
What you're doing when you're alive only matters to you too, and to people that love you. It doesn't matter to everyone, unless you're
I
really,
disagree.
really
I
important.
think that everybody matters to everybody. And what I mean by that is the impact that you have as an individual on the world at large is completely unquantifiable. I mean, and do either of you have kids?
No,
I do.
He does, yeah.
You have kids?
Yeah.
So you know, as you are journeying, you love your kids, right?
Yeah.
As you are
Yeah.
growing and as a father, you increasingly become more aware of the impact that random people have on your child's development. Am I right or wrong?
It's true.
What I'm trying to say is, and my ultimate retort to Isaac's worldview, and like I said, like obviously this ain't no like personal hate, nothing like that.
Of
Like
course
I said,
not. No, yeah.
I do respect you being able to cling to what you're saying and stand on what you're saying. I mean, I respect that. But the ultimate point I'm trying to get to is like when you have when you have kids, right? When you have a family in general, the self-serving, like, I'm just gonna lock in and just do what feels good. It depending on the value that you place on your family, it ceases to work. And I think my ultimate challenge to your worldview is just like, I don't think it, like, there is no atheist in the foxhole. You know what I mean? I don't think that it works, especially not in the macro sense. And I think that if everybody adapts I think the world that you would see if everybody took the worldview that you have right now and adapted that worldview, the world that you think you would see as a result is nothing like the world that you would actually see as a result.
Well, that's the
If you've even given it that much thought.
That's the difference between you and I. I don't think.
Think about the
I
world.
don't think. Yeah, like, it's just why? Why would I do that? I'm not the world. You know, it just
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. It's irrelevant
Isaac-
and it distracts
Isaac
you from everything.
Isaac doesn't believe that his existence has a
No, I hardly have any
unquantifiable
effect on
effect.
myself. Like, I
Yeah,
hardly get
he
to choose what I
doesn't believe
do.
that.
It's
Yeah.
silly, yeah. To me,
And he doesn't.
personally, I think it's
But also, he doesn't have children. He doesn't have like nuclear family. Like he is a young like guy that's able to just lock in. He's not tied down like that.
For
Like-
sure.
Like other people. And I think in his current state, it is like beneficial for him to like lock in and do that kind of stuff. And obviously there are parts of it I agree with and parts of it I don't, because I am a father and I know the impact that people can have on people, and I do like consider that stuff. But I do find myself in a healthier place when I give less of a fuck about things like world issues, my impact environmentally, societally, things like external influences on my children and my family, because I know that I can just stop that from happening by keeping my family and my child safe from those people. So and that provides me peace of
if I had
mind.
a child, I would take care of it. I would want to.
Yeah. I mean, of course,
Oh, yeah, no,
everyone would. It's not about that.
Yeah, it's not about that. It's like I said, it's just a conversation of values. You know what I mean? And also just like what we're trying to achieve. Like I said, and this is just, forgive me, this is just like the devil's advocate in me, because
Yeah.
I just have this problem when I hear people and they present like their thoughts, I just have to like challenge it to the furthest extent. And I will say,
yeah, I like that.
yeah,
We wanna break it-
yeah.
we wanna
And
get
I want
to the
people to do
truth.
that with me too.
We want to get to the
Absolutely.
truth. We
That's
want
what
it to
it's
be
about.
indivisible.
Right. It's about the pursuit of truth. And
Yep.
where we've kind of landed is we did kind of land in a metaphysical space that it just kind of isn't worth venturing back into, but I do think it lands there. But I think I see inconsistencies in what you're saying though, because if you're saying like, you, on the one hand, you're like, bro, I'm just locking into the flow state and I'm just in my zone. You're aspiring to lock into the flow state. It's like,
I'm not.
do you want to be in the flow state?
Well, I think I do, but since I understand that, I'm able to observe it instead of I can witness that.
In your mind, whether you think this is what's going on or not, this is what's going on. You're saying, in order to achieve.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Look. But okay, then you're saying I want to be in the flow state,
No,
and then
I'm
you
not.
say, what is
I'm not.
of that?
So I wasn't in the flow state for the past few days. Before, actually, 3 days ago or so, I had 2 days where I was actually pretty anxious for like almost no reason.
What I'm saying is, there's a reason why you want to get rid of the burdens that we place on ourselves. That's what I'm saying. You're getting rid of, it's like you said, you're taking the weights off is the goal.
Yes,
right?
I'm removing things. Yes,
Right.
I'm not after anything.
But what I'm trying to say is, there's a reason why, and the fact that there is a reason why invalidates the very idea that we should take the weights off.
I think you're so conditioned to believe you're in need of a reason to do things that you're just never gonna understand how to do things without reason. Basically, just purity.
I don't think we do anything without a reason.
Yeah, most people don't. Most people don't do that. Most people have a reason for everything.
I mean, I think that you have a reason for everything, even if you don't have a reason for everything. But it's just like you said, like, you don't place any value on your dreams. Dreams are useless to you. Like, if you know what dreams are and the space that like you have to account for the subconscious. You have to account for the fact that you do things without knowing that why you do them. But that not meaning that there is no why. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that Freud was right, but that's kind of what Freud was getting at, and that's kind of what Jung built off of. And I think that is where they both land in agreement, which is nobody does anything for nothing. You know, Freud's whole conceptualization was that like everything reverts back to aggression and sex, but mostly sex.
Mostly sex.
Jung disagreed with that, but I think that he played with the idea of like in your subconscious mind. Jung was Jung was on some wild shit because but I think the collective unconscious, that idea, I think that works practically. I think that conceptually, it's not as like I don't think that's like the cleanest way to put it. But the point I'm trying to get to is like these are people who are brilliant people who have really come to the understanding that like you do things without knowing why you do it, but there's a reason why you do it. I want to know, but you disagree, and that's cool. I want to know where Adam falls on that.
I actually don't disagree. I actually completely agree that most of the, like I mentioned in the first conversation we had, I don't actually have any control about what I'm interested in. Everything that I'm passionate about, I never chose them. I think most of the things I do in my life, I don't really have a choice.
But you just said that I'm conditioned to believe that everything that I do has to have a reason.
Right. And I still believe that.
But why? But like, I guess what he's asking is why. Yeah, because it's like if he has no control over why he does something, then
I'm not saying you have no. I'm not saying you have no control. I'm just saying like for just one example of something I don't have any control of. Like if I don't have any, I didn't choose to be interested in music or podcasting. I just do it. You know what I mean? But I'm not chasing anything.
Do you see the contradictions in what you're saying? And I'm not saying that it comes from a place of true contradiction. It may be the way that you're wording it. But you just contradicted yourself, though. You just said that, oh, well, I believe that you can do things without having a reason why you do it. And then I just said, well, most of the time you do things for a reason. You just don't know the reason. And then you said, I agree with that. Help me out here.
Okay, so you're basically saying that everything has to have a specific reason.
Even if you don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
How does that make sense? What do you mean if you don't know what it is? I don't understand that. Like if you don't know what it is, where is the reasoning? Where does reasoning come in if you don't know, if you don't actually have the reasoning in here?
Because it's subconscious.
Yeah, subconscious. That means that
you can't access it consciously.
That means there's levels to your self-awareness.
That sounds like it doesn't exist. That sounds like a delusion to me.
But it's not, because it plays out in practice.
When?
That's my,
like every day.
Well, like something specific. I want to know something specific though.
Well, when you do something and you don't know why, like I don't know how to explain it other than not using the term "don't know why." You do something subconsciously, like I don't know, like.
Okay, let me give you an example of the utility.
It's just something that people have told each other for a long time that isn't actually real.
Check it out. I'm about to present. I mean, but who are you to say that?
It's not about who am I.
You think you have more grand ends?
First of all, I don't even respect psychology that much. I really don't.
No. That's cool. But we're just acknowledging. It's one thing to say, me personally, I don't believe in that. It's another thing to say none of that's real. Everybody's just conditioned. You have to at least accept the limitations of your own awareness, because I have to accept the limitations of mine. Maybe it is true that all of this is nonsense. I'm not going to jump to that conclusion, and I do think that it's more likely that this isn't nonsense.
Well,
based
hold
off
on.
It. But let me
now you're contradicting yourself, because then you're saying, okay, I can't tell you that the subconscious doesn't exist, but then you can tell me there's a limit to awareness. It doesn't make sense. What do you mean? What do you mean? How is there a limit to awareness? What does that actually mean?
Because we don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. That's not
what awareness really is. Awareness is not knowledge.
In most cases, they're pretty interchangeable, though.
We're not talking about most, but that's not what we're talking. We're actually trying to get to a truth. And what is indivisible? And what is the truth? What is the truth of that statement? I don't think there really is a truth to that statement. There's no limit to awareness that you could possibly come up with. Just like I said, there's no such thing as subconscious, which I don't say there's no such thing. I just said there is no evidence for that.
Hold on. Well, we need to let's Google.
But there is evidence of subconscious.
Awareness versus
maybe I don't know yet. So what is it?
Awareness versus knowledge.
Like oral fixation. It's subconscious.
How?
But I don't understand how that's subconscious if you're literally doing it.
Because your brain is telling you to do it, not for any reason other than you have a fixation. It's a subconscious action that your brain forces you to take a physical one. it's not something you think about. It's something that you do subconsciously. Like you pick up something, you chew on it, you bite your nails, you hit your vape. Subconscious.
So every like reaction is a subconscious thing.
Check it out.
Is every
Check it
reaction
out.
subconscious? Because that's a reaction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because
So-
conscious thought is like in the present moment, and I think we've all established that.
So check it out. Awareness versus knowledge, so that we can just like get off of that specifically. Awareness and knowledge are two words that can be used interchangeably in certain contexts. However, there is a distinct difference between awareness and knowledge. Awareness is perceiving, knowing, but see, it literally says awareness is knowing. What is knowing? Knowledge. Feeling or being conscious of events, objects, thoughts, emotions, or sensory patterns. Knowledge is facts, information, skills acquired through experience or education. The key difference between awareness and knowledge is that knowledge is associated with a deep understanding and familiarity with a subject, whereas awareness does not imply a deep understanding. So, in the context that I presented, what I'm saying by saying that there are limitations to awareness, just to clear up what I'm saying, is we have to be knowledgeable and aware of the fact that we don't know everything. And if you don't know everything, you can't be aware of everything. Therefore, there's a limitation on your awareness. Is there any arguing that?
I'm not really sure if I even agree with the definition of awareness, but maybe we're using it differently. That word.
Well,
because when I think of awareness, I think more about like just a deep understanding of something, especially like a self-observation type of thing.
Well, just going back to like evidence for the subconscious mind, and that every action has a reason, right? Let's take dreams, something that you have deemed unuseful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll get personal. So I have dreams. Well, it depends on where you want to take it. For the sake of this current conversation, I'll say that I have dreams sometimes where, let's say, me and my mom get into an argument, right? Growing up, I've had like, I'm a very conscious person, so at this point in my life, I'm aware of like my subconscious mind, and the thing about your dreams is like, it's hypothesized that that's sort of where you can observe your subconscious, and that's kind of one of the only ways that your subconscious reveals itself to your conscious mind. I have dreams where I'm literally fist fighting my mom and like beating the shit out of my mom. Well, I mean, I'm sure that correlate. I don't want to beat the shit out of my mom, but what that does tell me is, oh, like, yeah, you definitely have anger as it pertains to your childhood, how you grew up. But I didn't do anything. I didn't create my own dream. My conscious mind didn't say, I'm gonna go to sleep tonight and think about beating up my mom. No, I have a dream. I had a dream that happens, and I'm saying, dang, why am I dreaming about this? It's not a coincidence that we have dreams about things that we observe in the real world. You see what I'm saying? Our subconscious mind. I guess there's no like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the statement that there's no evidence of the subconscious is pretty hot take.
I mean, it is a hot take, but I think
it's
only
a hot take to someone who isn't like believing everything a psychologist tells me, because a lot of what they do isn't even science.
I definitely don't believe in everything the psychology and
science.
I just think it plays out in literal practice. Like there's just so many things that happen subconsciously.
Psychology doesn't. It's not even
like, I mean, even down to something as fundamental as thinking. Thinking is subconscious.
Psychology and science aren't really. They don't even function the same way. Like,
no, they definitely don't.
Oh yeah, no.
But that doesn't mean that one is more real than the other.
Well,
absolutely does. Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. Because I agree with Andrew Tate, because where he talks about like he said like, you can have a person that doesn't drink at all because their father was an alcoholic, and then you can have the same person who's an alcoholic because their father was an alcoholic. And that's not like, and a psychologist has two different treatments for the same people who grew up the same way with the same childhood, two completely different. Like, that's not science. That's not how science works.
It's not science at all. But what I'm trying to say is like, I don't equate or I don't exalt science to be the ultimate version of reality. I just think that it serves a purpose. I think psychology serves its own purpose in a moderately exalted, elevated state that
Well,
science does.
do you think that science is the best objective measure of reality that we have?
I'm gonna have to think about that one. I don't know if I can just answer
Objective.
that.
Not I'm not talking about any personal biases,
I know,
like exact
I
like
don't
religion excluded, like
know.
like, and I'm not saying it is the best. I'm saying it's the best one that we have as humans. The
Okay,
best way that we have to measure
Yeah,
objective
probably. I would
reality.
say probably. I mean,
but
Most likely.
before I head out, because I'm about to head out, I'll break
Absolutely.
that down real quick. Mm, the reason why I said I have to think about it, as far as like science being the best way of observing, like
The best one that we have.
the best one that we have.
Not saying it's the best. I'm not saying it's like like you said, it's not the highest, most exalted. I'm just
Well,
saying like
well, check
currently
it out.
with
Check it out.
what we have available to us. Science.
I'll say no, and this is why I say no, because even though we have even though science is like the measurement of or the observation of like how matter and energy react with one another, and like as a result biology, chemistry, all these, like that's what we mean when we say science, right?
No.
Like physical,
No.
observable.
I mean the scientific method where you make you have a hypothesis, you run an experiment, you see if it works, you test it like 100 times, and you come up with a result. That's science.
The scientific method, sure,
Yeah.
but you understand why I make a distinction between.
Yeah,
the two,
absolutely, I
because-
do, and that's why I want to clarify what I'm saying.
Yeah, the science. Yeah, absolutely. I think
That's what I'm saying.
it's probably the best that we have, the scientific method for sure.
And I think
But-
that's why when we talk about science being like so important,
But you
it's
can
like,
observe psychology with the scientific method, though.
you can,
So if you're
but it doesn't
if you're
always.
saying that-
But like I said with the alcoholic example, it doesn't always play out the exact same way. Whereas when something is true science, it does.
and I think that my final word on this, and I'm glad we had this DLC convo.
Yeah, it was great.
My final word on that would just be that I think right now is a time where everybody should really start looking to the limitations of science. I do believe the science has limitations, and the reason why I say that is that there are certain things that I think that human beings will be able to comprehend given enough time. So let's say we live another 1,000,000 years, it's certain shit that we'll be able to conquer. We may be able to conquer death. We may be able to conquer I mean, obviously things like poverty, physical limitations, things like that.
Illness, that kind
I
of
don't
stuff.
think we'll ever be able to crack time. Me personally, I don't think that time will ever. I don't think. I think that it's.
That's because
I think it's a different game.
Well, I don't think
And
it's real. So, I mean, it's man-made. Time is
Yeah.
man-made. The Earth just revolves around the sun.
We're saying that time is man-made, but that's not true because we can observe. We have knowledge of the time before the current time. So you can say that like clocks and like the hours of the day aren't
But we
real.
only
But what I mean,
we only know
science-
about that stuff because someone wrote it down. You know.
No. Did you exist yesterday?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I see.
So in that sense,
we have memories.
Time works. Well, it's memories of something that is there. Time in the way that we use to measure it, as far as like, oh, it's 5:59 p.m. or whatever. I don't think, that's not real. That's just something that we kind of like, okay, yeah, we work off of a day and night cycle.
Yeah, we use that to schedule things, yeah.
But time in and of like the actual metaphysical force that governs reality time, which is a thing that I feel like we have to accept as a thing because we did wake up yesterday. I don't think science, I don't think that's the realm of science. And like I said before, like, okay, you take certain, I think, and this is going to be like a really brief conceptualization of how I think this stuff works. We have objective reality, and then I feel like there are walls of the objective reality, and then I feel like there are things outside of the walls of the objective reality. And this is just sort of like an abstract, this is me kind of just like on some psychological abstract thinking, just to be demonstrative. There are certain things that are unknown unknowns that we'll never be able to crack. But then we have known unknowns, which are the walls in between that world outside of objective reality and the objective reality, right? The things on the walls of that is like, okay, we can take the number 5 and we can say, okay, the character that we use, the symbol that we use to represent 5. We can write that down and memorize and have a conceptualization of what that is. We can put 5 ones in a row and count and say that's 5 ones in a row. But the actual thing that is 5, we cannot conceptualize it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because we see it play out in objective reality. Math works. That's why people use it. You get what I mean? But if I told you, hey, close your eyes and think of 5, you're either going to think of 5, the number, or you're going to think of 5 of something. But you can't think of actual 5. That is like,
I don't reasoning.
But check it out. I don't think science can play with that. You get what I'm saying? And that's just me. But yeah, guys, I'm about to take my product to the airport.
Damn, I wish we could do this longer. All right,
bro. Anytime you guys want to have a conversation, I hope I'm not a burden. I appreciate y'all.
No, I love this. I love it.
Yeah,
anytime, great. Hit me up for sure. And I can't wait for people to see the other podcast and this one. Yeah. That's just
next
week.
Really
dope.
Next week, bro. Yeah.
I'm ready. All right, y'all.
Peace.
Fuck! No.
That was a deep one. That was a really deep one.
Long. Oh.
I'm still stuck on, because I still want to talk about the subconscious thing. I wish we didn't get away from that.
We can talk about it though.
I'm starting to realize I might be coming from like another world. With these ideas, like they're not even. I don't think I can explain sometimes with just the words that I know.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Cam thinks, but I also know that what he's talking about are like, these are philosophical theories. You see what I'm saying? These are things that are like, that people like Jung and Nietzsche and these people talked about and wrote about, but they've never actually demonstrated that they work. They've just been like, it's like communism.
Here are my ideas.
Yeah, it's just my ideas. And it's like, that's fine. And it's fine for you to think that these are good ideas, but you can't say things like, well, this is the way it is. It's like, no, it's just not, doesn't play out that way.
I think I got strawmanned a little bit with the reasoning, with the subconscious thing, because he keeps trying to put me in a place where I'm only thinking that every single thing is completely without outside influence, which what he thinks is reasoning. But I don't think we're using the word reasoning properly. And as far as subconscious go, you could say that's more of a either pure action or a reaction, but human beings are just naturally reactive. But I wanted to get to that point where I said that, like, okay, well, first off, human beings are reactive animals, because we are animals, and we are chemicals, and we are reactive. But then he would have probably been like, well, if we are reactive, then you can't be pure ever. But I think what he's doing is he's trying to put the physical and the mind and like the consciousness together. That's the problem, is that they're not necessarily, they don't behave the same. And that's the problem, is that like, we can talk about subconscious, we can talk about reasoning, but then when you're trying to put that in things like, can you do an action without having like an aspiration towards it? Well, that's the problem, I think, is the conditioning is so deep that you think you need a reason to do something. And perhaps there is something that where we named it subconscious, but I guess I don't know how to really make sense of that word, because it's just it's really made up, like, by people who have never been able to show what a subconscious is. So I don't think it's really like, I don't think the word subconscious is real. That's what I should have said. The word subconscious is not real, but the delusion that we have things like a subconscious is where I'm trying to get at. Like, I think it's more of a delusion to say we have a physical subconscious almost, like they treat it like it's like a measurable thing, and it's not, and it's just made up. People do reactions, like the mouth fixation. That's a reaction, yes, but there is still, like you said, no reasoning. So I think I was still right. I don't know. I still don't know where I'm contradicting unless you can help me out with that, because maybe I'm just still lost.
Well, I think what he was saying is like, because you were specifically talking about you want to be like free of desires and free of attachments, but he was saying like that idea of wanting that is contradicting the idea of not wanting anything.
Of course.
right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree, I agree with him.
And I said, and that's what I was saying. It's like, yeah, Isaac agrees with you, and he's aware of that.
Exactly. That's what and I even said that. I was like, but I recognized it and I
Yeah,
observed it.
and you've
But he stopped
observed.
me and he tried to like kind of straw man me a little bit. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to get people to understand. It's like I don't actually live what I know is the truth. I intellectually understand the truth, but I can't live it because I'm so asleep. I'm not awake. Like I am completely a sheep. I am so conditioned that I don't know what it's like to not love my parents. I don't know what that's like. I've never felt that. To be so detached that I understand that our relationship is still transactional. That doesn't affect me yet because I haven't gone that far. But that's the problem, is that when we have these debates, we automatically, well, I didn't, but he's kind of automatically thinking that my understanding of the truth is like how I'm trying to live. In reality, I'm not really trying to live it. I just understand it.
Yeah, and I mean, it is how you're trying to live, and that's fine, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you are living that way. And I think that a lot of it comes from like wording. See, like if you were to say to him what you just said to me, like, I'm a sheep, I'm not living this way, I just am aware that this is the truth, then I think it would come off a lot better than saying like, no, you're conditioned to believe that you have to have a reason to do something, because then it comes
Either
off
way,
as
it's
like,
still
no,
truth.
it is the truth. And that's what I was saying. I do agree with a lot of what he's saying, but in practice it doesn't work. But what does work is understanding the truth of things, which is that the world is a place of things. And you just like have to understand that all these relationships and ideas and goals and things that you have, they aren't real. They're just things that you can just become detached from at any point if you are willing to sacrifice. You know?
And if you're willing, like I'm probably never gonna get to that point.
Yeah, most people don't.
Most people will never. They're so conditioned and they love what they love and they love being attached. And that's not a problem.
There's nothing wrong with that.
That's the thing. When I say stuff like that, he'll say, well, so you think it's not optimal to, I'm like, I don't think that's either or. It's just, or like, oh, that's what I meant to say is, he'll say like, oh, you think that's a bad thing or it's like a flaw. I'm like, no, like it's not a flaw. It's just human nature, I guess you could say. People just do that. We just do that, and it's because we're brought up to be conditioned.
And I think what Cam thinks is that like accepting that instead of trying to get away from it is more optimal. And that's like where you guys differ in thought. He thinks like you should embrace your attachments and like put everything into them as opposed to trying to get away from attachment as a whole.
But I think the only person who has evidence is actually him, because, but it's actually not, in my opinion, supportive of his argument, because the only evidence he has is that it gets in the way, because most people are suffering from crazy anxiety and depression. The vast majority of people are, especially in like our society. And that just shows like them embracing all their desires and wants and aspirations aren't working, especially because most of them aren't even their own. So like they're kind of confused. I don't think it really is, helping anybody, but it's not a bad or a good thing. But I think a lot of times I'm having an issue explaining it, and then like he'll hear a word and he'll bring his understanding of it, and then like kind of like straw man a little bit without. I'm not saying he's doing it like nefariously, but he's building my argument for me, and that's the problem, is that maybe I'm just not explaining it well enough, like he said. But like I have an issue with the word subconscious because it's such a made up, man-made word, just like time is, like just the whole like the calendar and all that. Subconscious is the same thing. It's just a thing that we made up to talk about patterns of like reactions and behavior. And I do think, yes, there are things that we don't really control in ourselves, which I definitely admitted. But as far as doing things without reason, I do think that's possible. It's not about not reacting, it's about not planning. It's different. It's not about not reacting. It's about not forcing yourself to plan to do something. But that's what I really meant to say. But it's hard to, he goes on for a while, and sometimes I kind of lose my point.
Yeah. Understandable. It was a good little episode, good little hour though.
Yeah, I wish other boys would have made it.
Yeah. Q got burned out on the loader.
It was actually kind of grindy a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, they're all like that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's an art. That's what RPGs are.
Yeah, they're just grindy ass games. But yeah, freaking. Speaking of Jordan Peterson, one of the ideas that you mentioned, the World of Things. I watched some. I didn't get to finish it, unfortunately, but I watched him debate that Zizek guy. Did you ever see that?
No.
It's 2019, not that long ago, and they all say Jordan Peterson got destroyed. And now, when I say they all say, just a few people I saw on the internet, but a lot of people were saying it, like in some forums. So I was like, oh, well, let me check this out. I didn't finish it though, so I really don't have much to say about it. But if you want, we can watch some of it, or we can just put on a portion of it. Yeah, I think there's like some clips of it. Maybe we can take like a clip and react to it or something.
Let's see. Debate.
Bro, like it was like a damn football game. People were like, I was like, oh my god, is this a fucking debate or a damn hockey game? That's pretty cool.
Lavoj Zizek.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have seen clips of this.
I think I saw like some of it years ago, and I was supposed to watch it back then, and I forgot.
All right, fuck this. Okay, here we go. Here we go. It was like, where?
The first opening statement.
Oh god, this
Oh,
is the
right.
opening statement?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't have to watch all that. It's
Well,
like super
thank you for
long.
that Insanely
Because
enthusiastic
each opening statement is 30
welcome
minutes
for
each.
the entire event, and also for being here. I have to tell you first that
Maybe we can say
event,
the
and
first.
suppose
Actually,
my life
I
in
just
some
forgot
sense
how like
hit
long
a
and drawn out it is.
milestone that I was just made aware of by a stagehand.
What
today
are they
backstage
debating?
who informed me that last
It's a
week
lot of it
tickets
has to
for
do
this
with like
event were being
capitalism
scalped
versus like
online
socialism
at a
type of
higher
stuff. Like
price than the
generally
tickets
that,
for the
generally.
Leafs playoff game. That there were forms of stupidity that I couldn't engage in because I would be
Damn.
punished by the market enough to eradicate the enterprise. And so
I'll tell you one thing, Peterson's a better speaker than the other guy, but they said the other guy was like just manhandling him.
okay, and then so the next issue. This is a weird one. So Marx and Engels also assume that this dictatorship of the proletariat, which involves absurd centralization, the overwhelming probability of corruption, and impossible computation as the proletariat now try to rationally compute the manner in which an entire market economy could run, which cannot be done because it's far too complicated for anybody to think through. The next theory is that somehow the proletariat dictatorship would become magically hyperproductive. And there's actually no theory at all about how that's going to happen. And so I had to infer the theory, and the theory seems to be that once you eradicate the bourgeoisie, because they're evil, and you get rid of their private property, and you eradicate the profit motive, then all of a sudden, magically, the small percentage of the proletariat who now run the society determine how they can make their productive enterprises productive enough so they become hyperproductive. Now, and they need to become hyperproductive for the last error to be logically coherent.
This is a massive, massive problem with communism / socialism.
What?
Once you eliminate the billionaires, how do? Wait, no, I mean you like get rid of like the you.
Oh, like eliminate. Oh, my bad.
Eliminate them. Once you get rid of all of them, because
Yeah.
that's like the whole thing in communism. You know, get rid of the billionaires, have society run like workers take the means of production. It's the whole thing. Okay, so how do the workers become CEOs? Like, how do they acquire the skills and knowledge to run a business?
Well, from what I understand is historically they can't.
Well, yeah, they don't. That's what he's saying right now. It's like it, and in theory, like the theory is literally like magically, once these workers take over the means of production, their businesses become hyper productive. How?
It's shown to be the opposite in like the Soviet Union.
Yeah, of course it is. Because there's no way for you to acquire the skills to run a business when you've been a worker your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you get rid of all the businessmen.
Yeah.
In relationship to the Marxist theory, which is that at some point the proletariat, the dictatorship of the proletariat, will become so hyperproductive that there'll be enough material goods for everyone across all dimensions. And when that happens, then what people will do is spontaneously engage in meaningful creative labor, which is what they had been alienated from in the capitalist horror show, and the utopia will be magically ushered in. But there's no indication about how that hyperproductivity is going to come about, and there's also no understanding that, well, that isn't the utopia that is going to suit everyone, because there are great differences between people. And some people are going to find what they want in love, and some are going to find it in social being, and some are going to find it in conflict and competition, and some are going to find it in creativity, as Marx pointed out. But the notion that will necessarily be the end goal for the utopian state is preposterous. And then there's the Dostoevskian observation too, which is one not to be taken lightly, which is, well, what sort of shallow conception of people do you have that makes you think that if you gave people enough bread and cake, in the Dostoevskian terms, and nothing to do with except to busy themselves
Yeah,
with
exactly.
the continuity of the species, that they would all of a sudden become peaceful and heavenly? Dostoevsky's
Yeah,
idea was that
'cause
we were built for trouble.
Does it not
And
feel
we
like
were
that
handed
here?
everything we needed on a silver platter.
Does it not feel like everyone has enough food and shit to do whatever they want if they like have a brain and a job, and all they have to concern themselves with really is like, you know, fucking? And is this a utopia? Is that playing out? Like, is what makes you think that would be the case? Seems like more people would get up to no good.
The first thing we would do is engage in some form of creative destruction, just so something unexpected could happen.
Exactly. It's like the Matrix. You've seen the Matrix. Remember when he gets to the room with the architect, and he talks about how they've made the first Matrix, and everything was perfect. You know, like nothing, no crime, nothing bad ever happened, and like it broke down immediately because people knew like they were in a simulation.
Yeah.
Like, because they couldn't handle like nothing ever bad going wrong. And that's what he's saying. Like, the first thing you would do in a utopia is like do some kind of creative, like set something on fire just to see like
Yeah, just see what happened. Yeah.
That's the first thing people would
just
do.
so we can
That's
have the
interesting.
adventure of our lives. And I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, exactly. Good point, Jordan.
So, and then the last error, let's say, although by no means the last, was this, and this is one of the strangest parts of the Communist Manifesto, is Marx admits, and Engels admit repeatedly in the Communist Manifesto, that there has never been a system of production in the history of the world that was as effective at producing material commodities in excess than capitalism. Like that's extensively documented in the Communist Manifesto.
Wait, did he just say that you can't make as much like
Look,
stuff?
we got to get.
Is that what he's basically saying? I kind of missed
Yeah,
that.
well, he said that both Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto wrote that there's never been a system in human history that's been more productive than capitalism.
Yeah, that's just so evident. I mean, that's completely the reason
much
why
material-
we have everything we have now.
Yeah, exactly. They both acknowledge it too. The founders of the Communist Manifesto, like they both acknowledge that capitalism is a superior financial or economic structure.
Security for everyone as possible, as fast as we can. And capitalism already seems to be doing that at a rate that's unparalleled in human history. Wouldn't the logical thing be just to let the damn system play itself out? I mean, unless you're assuming that the evil capitalists are just going to take all of the flat screen televisions and put them in one big room and not let anyone else have one. The logical assumption is that, well, you're already on a road that's supposed to produce the proper material productivity. And so, well, that's 10 reasons, as far as I can tell. And so what I saw in that the Communist Manifesto is like seriously flawed in virtually every way it could possibly be flawed, and also all in evidence that Marx was the kind of narcissistic thinker who could think. He was a very intelligent person, and so was Engels. But what he thought when he thought was that what he thought was correct. And he never went the second stage, which is, well, wait a second, how could all of this go terribly wrong? And if you're a thinker, especially a sociological thinker, especially a thinker on the broad scale, a social scientist, for example, one of your moral obligations is to think, you know, you might be wrong about one of your fundamental axioms, or 2 or 3 or 10, and as a consequence, you have the moral obligation to walk through the damn system and think, well, what if I'm completely wrong here and things invert and go exactly the wrong way? And like, I just can't understand how anybody could come up with an idea like the dictatorship of the proletariat, especially after advocating its implementation with violent means, which is a direct part of the Communist Manifesto, and actually think, if they were thinking, if they knew anything about human beings and the proclivity for malevolence that's part and parcel of the individual human being, that could do anything but lead to a special form of hell, which is precisely what did happen. And so I'm going to close, because I have 3 minutes, with a bit of evidence as well that Marx
Would
also
love to
thought
see
that
this guy manhandle this guy.
what would happen inevitably
Apparently,
as
that's all he did this
capitalism
whole
is the
debate.
rich would get richer,
Yeah.
and the poor would get
I would
poorer.
love to
So
see
there would be
that,
inequality.
'cause-
The first thing I'd like to say is we do not know how to set up a human system of economics without inequality. No one has ever managed it, including the communists.
Never. There's never been a human economic system without inequity and inequality.
I don't think there's ever been 2 humans in the same room without inequity or inequality.
Yeah,
That's
It's
just
just-
fundamental.
just the way it is.
Nothing is equal. Nothing will ever be equal.
No, there's no such thing.
Yeah, it's a complete delusion.
Like, not. I mean, obviously, you can have equal of something, but you can't be equal to someone else.
Right, yeah, I'm talking about like something abstract like human beings where you can't be equal. That just doesn't make any sense. 5 can equal 5, yes. Mathematically, like, or you could say functionally, what do you call it? Mechanically, yes, things can be
Yeah.
equal in value of that sort, but not in abstractions like human beings with skill sets and like it's too abstract. It's all art.
Yeah.
How can art be equal to art? It doesn't make any sense.
And the form of inequality changed, and it's not obvious by any stretch of imagination that the free market economies of the West have more inequality than the less free economies in the rest of the world. And the one thing you can say about capitalism is that although it produces inequality, which it absolutely does, it also produces wealth, and all the other systems don't. They just produce inequality.
Damn.
So here's a few stats. Here's a few free market stats, okay? From 1800 to 2017, income growth adjusted for inflation grew by 40 times for production workers and 16 times for unskilled labor. Well, GDP rose by a factor of about 0.5 from 1 AD to 1800. So from 1 AD to 1800 AD, it was like nothing, flat. And then all of a sudden, in the last 217 years, there's been this unbelievably upward movement of wealth. And it doesn't only characterize the tiny percentage of people at the top who, admittedly, do have most of the wealth. The question is, not only, though, what's the inequality? The question is, well, what's happening to the absolutely poor at the bottom? And the answer to that is, they're getting richer faster now than they ever have in the history of the world. And we're eradicating poverty in countries that have adopted moderate free market policies at a rate that's unparalleled. So here's an example. One of the UN millennial goals was to reduce the rate of absolute poverty in the world by 50% between 2000 and 2015. And they defined that as $1.90 a day. Pretty low, but you have to start somewhere. We hit that at 2012, 3 years ahead of schedule. And you might be cynical about that and say, well, it's kind of an arbitrary number, but the curves are exactly the same at $3.80 a day and $7.60 a day. Not as many people have hit that, but the rate of increase towards that is the same. The bloody UN thinks that we'll be out of poverty defined by $1.90 a day by the year 2030. It's unparalleled. And so the rich may be getting richer, but the poor are getting richer too. And that's not the, look, I'll leave it at that. Because I'm out of time. But I'll leave it with this. The poor are not getting poorer under capitalism. The poor are getting richer under capitalism by a large margin. And I'll leave you with one statistic, which is that now in Africa, the child mortality rate in Africa now is the same as the child mortality rate was in Europe in 1952. And so that's happened within the span of one lifetime. And so if you're for the poor, if you're actually concerned that the poorest people in the world rise above their starvation levels, then all the evidence suggests that the best way to do that is to implement something approximating a free market economy. And so thank you very much.
I have to agree. I want to see, though. I'm not going to watch this whole thing. I'm just going to watch like the last.
Yeah, they go on for a minute. They both have 30-minute intros.
From right here.
Infinite reproduction. I think there are such antagonisms. The threat of ecological catastrophe, the consequence of new technoscientific developments, especially in biogenetics, and new forms of apartheid. All these antagonisms concern what Marx called commons, the shared substance of our social being. First, of course, the commons of external nature. threatened by pollution, global warming, and so on. Now, let me be precise here. I'm well aware how uncertain analysis and projections are in this domain. It will be certain only when it will be too late. And I am well aware of the temptation to engage in precipitous extrapolations. When I was younger, to give you a critical example, there was in Germany an obsession with Waldsterben, the dying of forests, with predictions that in a couple of decades, Europe will be without forests. But according to recent estimates, there are now more forest areas in Europe than 100 years or 50 years ago. But there is nonetheless, I claim, the prospect of a catastrophe here. Scientific data seem to me at least abundant enough. And we should act in a large-scale collective way. And I also think, this may be critical to some of you, there is a problem with capitalism here for the simple reason that its managers, not because of their evil nature, but that's the logic of capitalism, care to expand self-reproduction, and environmental consequences are simply not part of the game. This is, again, not a moral reproach. And incidentally, so that you will not think that I don't know what I'm talking about, in communist countries, those in power were obsessed with expanded reproduction and were not under public control, so the situation was even worse. So how to act? First, by admitting we are in a deep mess. There is no simple democratic solution here. The idea that people themselves should decide what to do about ecology sounds deep, but it begs an important question, even if their comprehension is not distorted by corporate interests. What qualifies them to pass a judgment in such a delicate matter? Plus, the radical measures advocated by some ecologists can themselves trigger new catastrophes. Let me mention just the idea which is floating around of solar radiation management. The continuous
This is climate change.
massive dispersal
But
of
he just said it himself that he was saying that he was trying to say that he wasn't going to try to rely on any extrapolated data or statistics, and the example he used was that they said like in 1952 that there would be no forests in Europe in like 50 years, and he was like, but then even now there's like no change in the level of forestation in Europe even after 50 years, like the exact same. But he's still talking about climate change as if it's real. I just don't understand.
aerosols into our atmosphere to reflect and absorb sunlight and thus cool the planet. Can we even imagine how...
Is your
the
argument really that his argument seems to be that capitalism is like based on making extremely like as much money as possible without any regard for moral or value any kind of life whatsoever?
He actually touches up on a lot of things in his introduction. I did watch most of
balance
his
of our
introduction.
Earth function, and in what unpredictable ways geoengineering can disturb it in such times of urgency, when we know we have to act but don't know how to act, thinking is needed. Maybe we should turn around a little bit Marx's famous Thesis 11. In our new century, we should say that maybe in the last century, we tried all too fast to change the world. The time has come to step back and interpret it. The second threat, the commons of internal nature. With new biogenetic technologies, the creation of a new man, in the literal sense of changing human nature, becomes a realist prospect. I mean primarily so-called popularly Neuralink, the direct link between our brain and digital machines, and then brains among themselves. This, I think, is the true game changer. The digitalization of our brain opens up unheard of new possibilities of control. Directly sharing your experience with your beloved may appear attractive, but what about sharing them with an agency without you even knowing it? Finally, the common space of humanity itself. We live in one and the same world, which is more and more interconnected, but nonetheless deeply divided.
We're watching this crazy
so how to
debate.
react to this? The first and sadly predominant reaction is the one of protective self-enclosure. The world out there is in a mess. Let's protect ourselves by all kinds of walls. It seems that our countries are run relatively well, but is the mess the so-called rogue countries find themselves in not connected to how we interact with them? Take what is perhaps the ultimate rogue state, Congo. Warlords who rule provinces there are always dealing with Western companies, selling them minerals. Where would our computers be without coltan from Congo? And what about foreign interventions in Iraq and Syria, or by our proxies like Saudi Arabia in Yemen? Here, refugees are created. A new world order is emerging, a world of... Can I just finish the page? 2 minutes, literally. A world of peaceful coexistence of civilizations, but in what way does it function? Forced marriages and homophobia are okay, just that they are limited to another country, which is otherwise fully included into the world market. This is how refugees, again, are created.
Doesn't matter.
The second reaction is global capitalism.
Recording.
Think about socially responsible corporate figures like Bill Gates or George Soros. They passionately support LGBT, they advocate charities, and so on. But even in its extreme form, opening up our borders to the refugees, treating them like one of us, they only provide what in medicine is called a symptomatic treatment. The solution is not for the rich Western countries to receive all immigrants, but somehow to try to change the situation, which creates massive waves of immigration. And we are complicit in this. Is such a change a utopia? No. The true utopia is that we can survive without such a change. So here I think, I know it's provocative to call this a plea for communism. I do it a little bit to provoke things. But what is needed is nonetheless in all these spheres, I claim, ecology, digital control, unity of the world, capitalist market, which does great things, I admit it, has to be somehow limited, regulated, and so on. Before you say it's a utopia, I will tell you, but just think about in what way global market already functions today. I always thought that neoliberalism is a fake term. If you look closely, you will see that state plays today more important role than ever precisely in the richest capitalist economies. So, you know, the market is already limited, but not in the right way, to put it naively. So, a pessimist conclusion. What will happen? In spite of protests here and there, we will probably continue to slide towards some kind of apocalypse, awaiting large catastrophes to awaken us. So I don't accept any cheap optimism. When somebody tries to convince me that in spite of all the problems, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, my instant reply is yes, and it's probably another train coming towards us. Thank you very much.
So basically, from what I'm understanding is he's basically explaining that from what I get, like I said, that's only half of it, the portion of his introduction, so he does have a lot of context. And I did hear most of it before, but a lot of it sounded like he actually understands that, yes, capitalism has some redeeming qualities, but that it's always going to end up being a means of control still and creating more world problems than people are willing to admit. I think he's basically trying to expose the fact that like a lot of problems are still happening because of these powerful companies that are functioning under capitalism, and then they're creating a lot of, you know, like I said,
chaos.
There you go, chaos in other countries.
And then people are like, oh, but it's fine because like look how much money people are making and like da da da, and it's like, well, but you know they're killing people.
I mean,
and they're setting up banana republics.
and he was saying like Congo was a good example of like, yeah, people, extremely poor people out here are mining for like pennies, and they're, you know, making billions of dollars off of their cobalt or something, or lithium.
But I'm not mining.
I didn't wake up in them in the Minecraft. But I think he did bring up some interesting points. I really want to watch the whole thing one day, but I got to give myself time to do that because he's also a little hard for me to understand personally. His like lisp, and he talks at a certain pace that's like different, so I have to really pay extra attention when he talks. So I really want to give him some time, but I'll save that for later.
I just want to hear them talk to each other.
Yeah, go back and forth. No, you.
Yeah. Your shit is trash.
Yeah. Who made that soup? Congo. Snakeskin boots.
My final point, why I think this self-limitation of capitalism is needed. First, about happiness. Just a couple of remarks. Jordan, I want to ask you, but isn't it, am I dreaming? I think I'm not. I remember a couple of years ago, it was reported all around the world, some kind of a investigation, percentage of people interviewed in different countries, do they feel happy with their life? And the shock was that some Scandinavian countries, which we considered social democratic paradise were very low, while Bangladesh, I think, was close to the top. Now, I know this logic has a limit. I don't buy the bullshit of poor people are happy in their world there and so on. But you know, my argument here is not against you. My argument here is problematizing happiness even more. Look, this may interest you. I was years ago in I think, Lithuania, and we debated, I report on this in one of my books, when were people in some perverted sense, and this is the critique of the category of happiness for me, happy. And we came to the crazy result. After the Soviet intervention, Czechoslovakia in 1970s and 80s. Why? For happiness, first, you should not have too much democracy, because this brings the burden of responsibility. Happiness means there is another guy out there, you can put all the blame on him. And as the joke went in Czechoslovakia, if there is bad weather, a storm, oh, these communists screwed it up again. That's one condition of happiness. The other condition, much more subtle one, is, and this was done in Czechoslovakia, those dark times after the life was relatively moderately good, but not perfect. Like, there was meat all the time. Maybe once a month there was not meat in the stores. It was very good to remind you how happy you are the other time. Another thing, they had a paradise which should be at a proper distance. West Germany, affluence. It was not too far, but not directly accessible, you know. So it was, so maybe in your critique of communist regimes, I agree with you, you should more focus on something that I experienced. Of, you know, don't look only at the terror, ultimately totalitarian regime. There was a kind of a silent, perverted pact between, at least in this late, a little bit more tolerant, but I still oppose them, communist regimes, between power and population. The message was, leave us the power, don't mess with us, and we guarantee you a relatively safe life, employment, private pleasures, private niche, and so on and so on. So I am not surprised. But again, this is not for me the argument for the communists, but against happiness. That, you know, people said when the wall fell down, what a wonder in Poland. My God, like Solidarność, which was prohibited a year ago, now triumphed at the elections. Who could imagine this? Yes, but the true miracle, in a bad sense for me, was 4 years later, democratically ex-communists came back to power. So, you know, again, this is for me not the argument for them, but simply for the, let's call it, corruptive nature of happiness. So my formula, maybe you would agree with it, is, my basic dogma is, happiness should be treated as a necessary byproduct. If you focus on it, you are lost. It comes as a byproduct of you working for a cause and so on. That's the basic.
Agree or disagree?
I was about to jump out of my seat and be like, yes, and then he said it should be a byproduct towards working. So actually, you know what? I think I know what he means. Yes, finally, that is so refreshing. Finally, somebody with a fucking brain. Holy shit. So many people are out here trying to outsource their happiness. I think I know what he's saying, but he's trying to still talk from a societal standpoint. So obviously, I don't really relate super well to that. But yes, finally, someone who's willing to say the goal should not be happiness. The happiness should just be a byproduct of everybody on the same thing. But at the same time, the word should and everybody on the same page. How do you get that to happen? But like, I think I understand what he's saying. It shouldn't be a measurement to go towards, because happiness is, first of all, an emotion, and it's not useful. So he's basically saying, why are we going towards happiness when we should be going towards efficiency and things that like are helping everybody, and happiness will just be a byproduct anyway. Yeah. So perhaps that is pretty good. I mean, I don't know. In a societal standpoint, I'd say that's a very interesting point. I think it makes more sense than going for like a pursuit of happiness, because that is kind of silly in my opinion.
It comes as a byproduct of you working for a cause and so on. That's the basic thing for me. Second point, maybe we disagree here. China, of course, the miracle, economic miracle, was due to unleashing market reform and so on. But, and here comes my pessimism. Some of my liberal friends are telling me, yes, imagine what would they have achieved with also political democratization. I'm a pessimist here. No, they found a perfect formula of how. And that's the paradox of China today. The Communist Party is the best manager of capitalism and protector against workers. The truly dangerous thing in China today is not to flirt with Western ideas, is to organize trade unions, this is what worries me. This perfect combination between unleashing capitalism and still the authoritarian rule, or to put it in another way, my worry is that today, all around the world, this eternal marriage between capitalism and democracy is slowly disappearing. Till now, I admit it. Capitalism needed from time to time some 10, 20 years of dictatorship. When things started to improve, democracy returned. Chile, South Korea, and so on. I wonder if we are still at that. Now, just very quickly, your basic point in the introduction, in your introduction. You know, I'm tempted to say, the way you presented Communist Manifesto, the simplified image, and so on, it's crazy to say, but on many points, I agree with you, and it's a very complex argument. Marx didn't have, for example, a good theory of how social power exists. His idea was simply with disappearance of class structure. It's secretly, although he wouldn't have accepted it, a technocratic dream. Like, by experts, social life will be run as a perfect machine. Although he was at least aware of the problem, which is why he was so enthusiastic, Marx, about Paris Commune, you know, which was precisely not centralized power. So I'm not just defending Marx. I'm saying it was not clear to him. And so let's drop that. Maybe I have more interesting things to say. Another that brought up.
I want to hear what Jordan has to say.
Really wrong, but
yeah, he loves China.
I'm aware of it. I tend to agree with it. But I at the same time see so many explosive tensions. For example,
A fair question, but maybe it seems to me to be a fair question. Okay. You're a strange Marxist to have a discussion with. And, well, but here's why. This is not an insult by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I mean, one of the things that struck me when I was looking at your work was that well, first of all, you're a character, you know, and that's an interesting thing. Like
is this an insult or not?
It's not an insult. It's a sign of originality, and it's a sign of a certain amount of moral courage, and it's a sign of a certain temperament, and it makes you humorous and charismatic and attractive, and I think you appeal to young people the way that outside intellectual rebels appeal to young people, and so those are all positive things that can be used positively or negatively. And my question is, like, it seems to me that your reputation, unless I'm very misinformed about this, is as a strong supporter of Marxist doctrines on the left, or was that? And so then my question is, given the originality of your thought, why is it that you came to presume at some point in your life, perhaps not now and perhaps still, that the promotion of Marxism rather than Zizekism was appropriate? Because it seems to me that there's enough originality in your body of thought and lateral thinking in the manner in which you approach intellectual ideas that there's just no reason for you to be allied with a doctrine that's 170 years old and that is, if capitalism is rife with problems, is twice as rife with problems as that. And so you're kind of a mystery to me in that way. And so that's my question.
Okay. Very briefly, I developed systematically in my book critical insight into many traditional Marxist theses, so no doubt here. You know what I still admire nonetheless in Marx? Not those simplicities of Communist Manifesto, but I still think that his so-called critique of political economy, capital, and so on,
Bro,
is
you've got to be
tremendous
fucking kidding
achievement
me.
as a...
What?
My fucking phone factory reset again. God damn it. I didn't even do it this time.
I thought he was about to be like my hero. Wait, how did that happen to you? How does that like not...
Bro,
How did you not make that happen?
I don't know, dude. I actually literally don't know. It fucking died today, which is normal. And I was like, okay, well, you know, it died because I didn't charge it. Okay. So I get home, I put it on the charger. I just now fucking turned it back on. Fucking rip. I don't know what the fuck happened.
That is very strange. Maybe,
Time to hit the cloud. It's
What
time
the
to hit
hell?
the cloud, baby.
that makes
Yep.
that sounds
Time
strange.
to suck on the sweet, sweet tit of the cloud.
Nah, just got a new phone.
I really should get a new phone, honestly. This one's dog shit.
What kind of phone do you have?
It's a Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus.
Ooh, that's a nice phone.
It is a nice phone, but it's fucked now.
That's kind of older too. That's a little bit older, but it's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're on the
forget
12, I think 13.
No, I think
Jesus,
we're
we're
on
on-
the 20. They skipped it.
Yeah, they skipped it.
Oh,
To match 2022 and all that, or whatever.
oh,
But
that's cringe.
yeah, it
I
is
wish
a little
they didn't
weird.
do
But I
that.
mean, they have really nice, like the Galaxy 20 or whatever. 20, I think the Galaxy 21 was the one I almost bought. That shit is nice. Maybe you should get that one. Get one like a used one. They got some used ones, or even like refurbished ones on eBay for like mad cheap, and they're stupid nice cameras too.
Maybe I should.
I don't know how you feel about like used phones, but I used to buy them like that. And they'd work just fine.
You know, used phones are fine.
Maybe it used to be owned by a hitman. You never know.
Hey, that'd be cool.
So they're knocking down your door.
Little bitch,
Oh God.
have my money.
But anyway, yeah, Sadiq is interesting, bro. He's a very interesting guy. I wish I could understand him a little bit better. It's hard to understand the way he talks a little bit, but that's just me personally. I have a hard time understanding him, but he just has a little bit of an accent and a
Oh
little
my
lisp.
god, these fucking apes.
What is this shit? What are we watching?
It's a debate of communism
watching-
versus capitalism.
Oh Jesus, I need to get out of here. I just want to play some fucking League of Legends. Goodbye.
Oh no, we can do that. We can do that.
I just want to play some League. I don't want to debate you fuckers.
You
Oh,
don't
we're not
want
debating.
that.
We're just watching the debate.
We were watching one, yeah.
I don't want to watch a debate either.
Yeah. We can play some League.
Okay,
Could be doable.
doable. Nice, nice shirt, Hawaiian shirt, man.
It's my vacation shirt.
I have one too.
Yeah.
Mine's just like,
Even though you just got a job.
oh man,
He's gonna have to empty some anal glands.
oh my god.
Oh, what? What are you doing?
Emptying. I'm the emptying anal glands guy.
You're emptying. What are you? Okay.
So basically, I'm about to work at a pet resort,
Oh,
and I have to
that's
like.
cool. Yeah, you really are going to be emptying some anal
What?
glands then,
No,
huh?
man, I just didn't know this happened. Like,
You didn't know that, dude. You really should have looked into that job a little more before you
yeah,
took it.
holy shit. So, I'm fucked.
Yep.
Oh, well.
I mean, you should be fine as long as you don't mind touching dog bites.
I don't even like having pets. So,
What the fuck do you work at a pet resort for?
I didn't think it'd be doing that. I'm like, I feed them, take them out for some walks. I didn't think I was gonna be doing that.
You don't like pets, and you work at a place with pets, bro. You got to figure it out.
But not that I hate them either. I just don't own. Like, I'm not even the kind of guy that owns pets. You know. So it's
Gotcha,
like,
gotcha.
you know, it's just weird. But I mean, it's money. I just need money right now.
Fair enough.
I don't know. Worst case scenario, I can go be a bartender somewhere.
True.
I live like right in the middle of the city, so. But it's about to be
Oh,
winter.
do you live in the middle of
Yeah, I live downtown.
of place?
Yeah. Yep. So
My inability to. Oh my god! Hello.
it was so loud.
Is this a fucking e-girl? I hate the way this person fucking messages. I went 12-2 on Kog'Maw and ranked, and then my Lux support immediately messaged me and started talking like a girl. So I think I've got an e-girl going after me.
Nice. Now you
Not
can.
nice.
Now you can.
E-girls are hilariously unstable.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
You
best
should
part
go-
about them.
You should ask her for pictures of her feet,
I will not be doing that.
and then you should sell those pictures
Yeah.
as your own feet pics.
As my own feet pics. Oh, genius.
Or you should take pictures of your own feet
And sell them as hers.
and sell them as her feet pics.
So
Oh,
that's
wow.
Like, so that's like, oh my god,
That's-
I've always wanted a hobbit type of bitch.
Bro, my feet are so fucked, actually. They're not as bad as my girlfriend's, but my feet are pretty fucked.
Damn.
Damn.
Bro,
You're
my
like-
girlfriend's feet are so fucked up, bro. She
Does she do,
talks
like,
about
ballet or
it. She
something?
knows too. No, dude, she doesn't do ballet or anything. Her feet are just like all cracked and fucked up.
Oh,
and
my mom
shit.
is like
they're
that.
like, they're like, it's like hard in some places, and it's like weird and bad. I'm like, bro, you gotta get that figured out. She was like, yeah, sometimes I gotta like use a scraper, and I'm like, that's crazy. Don't
That's
talk to
low
me about it.
key kind of normal for chicks who wear certain kinds of like, you know, like heels or like certain kinds of shoes that'll just like
Yeah.
chafe so much that their skin just gets really dry. Like
Yeah,
they have to take
she
care of
wears.
it.
She wears a lot of like boots, like combat boots.
Oh yeah.
And then she also is on her feet all the time working.
Yep. That'll
She
do
works
it.
she works at a pharmacy.
So standing in a small area all day.
Yeah, running from a fucking desk to a drive-through
Get
all
some
the time.
Xanax.
Oh, dude, she tells me about the people that come to her work all the time. She works in I don't know if you know where Grayson Valley is. I can't say what the pharmacy, but wait, are we online?
We
Are
are.
we-
Well, I'm recording, so just don't. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I can't say where it is, but it's like this like really shady area of town and shit. And she tells me all the time about these like fucking like degenerate druggies that come in and get their like shit. Like she tells me about this one lady who gets like a 500 milligram antipsychotic injected into her veins daily, and I'm like, bro,
Daily
daily.
I
on
will
the
never get
daily.
sick.
Never.
She said talking to her is like talking to a ghost that doesn't know what like its past life was.
Wow.
I'm like, damn.
I'm just here for my shot.
Yeah, I'm just here for my shot.
My 58th booster.
She gets like a lot of like alcoholics in there too. Like this one guy, he's like 30 years old. His dad drives him to the pharmacy to get his like shit, and he's like got like beer on his breath every day, just like absolutely fucked up.
Not a
Big
Viagra.
alcohol man.
Hmm?
It's a big alcohol man.
Yes.
I bet they get a lot of Viagra too, though.
Yeah, they call it the weekend party pack when the fucking old men come through for the Viagra during the on like Friday.
Yeah. They come in looking like Magic with the Hawaiian shirt.
Number 5.
Suavemente.
Oh god.
I swear to God.
I don't blame him. Shit.
Funny.
Shit's about to pop.
Are you down to play ranked right now, Adam? Or are you-
Ranked
no?
league.
Bro, we don't want
Ranked
to
League
carry
of
you.
Legends. Dude,
I'm
no.
kidding. Come on, we can do it.
Don't take ring seriously.
I only play AD carry when I play ranked, and
I still
and
play Teemo mid. You don't want to play
I'm
them.
actually good at that shit. So, like
Why
I know
don't
I
you just do- Why don't you
Yikes.
do rank flex?
ranked flex.
They still have that?
Do
What the
they?
fuck is that?
Yeah, they do have ranked flex,
Fuck it, let's do it.
but I don't really want to fuck with it.
What
It's
is
kind
it?
of cringe.
Who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Does it affect your elo in like regular ranked?
You won't
would.
lose LP in your regular rank, no. Your solo and your flex is separate.
No, I want regular LP. Just do a 3-stack in regular ranked.
What's that?
Like 3 men. It's
Three
3
man ranked.
You can't do
I
that.
don't think you. Yeah, you can. I don't think you have to flex. I think flex is mostly five stacks.
I think
4
they
stacks.
took that away though. They only do duo again because they had it for a while where they allowed more than just duo. Now they're like back to just duo. Actually, or was it they took away duo?
No. Yeah, no, it's ranked solo
it's
duo
ranked solo
and
duo.
yeah, and ranked flex.
They took away duo. Yeah, they took it away. So
No, you can play
they took
duo.
away- Yeah, you can play duo. It's ranked solo duo and then ranked flex, which I
But
guess
you
is
can't
straight up.
play parties of 4.
Yeah, which is
You can
weird.
only play 3 or 5. So
Why is
ranked
4
flex.
disabled? I don't know.
interesting.
We flex. Okay, I guess we flex. We flex on him.